So, Dave, really good to meet you. I'm so glad that you agreed to this because Atlassians definitely want to learn more about distributed workforces. Like we have worked with remote workers in co-located and remote locations all the time. We're a global company, so of course we have to work remotely. But we weren't a 100% distributed workforce in that, like, the intention was to work with people no matter where they were. Versus default is co-located, and how do you bring in people who are remote, which is not quite the same thing. And so I'd love to talk a little bit with folks like yourself who have either worked remotely or on distributed teams and learn about what you've learned so that we can learn, but also so that the rest of our customers on Atlassian community can learn as well. So with that said, let's just start off with some softballs. Who are you? And tell me a little bit about like who you work with and what that setup looks like.
I'm Dave. I've been working with Atlassian tools for a relatively long time, probably a decade, give or take. And I started as a project manager, and naturally, since project managers or tend to be the stewards of process, we end up wiring up tools like Jira, since workflows and all that business.
Yeah.
So I fell into it. I got good at it, and then became an Atlassian person or like admin, like for real. And I ended up doing that for a while, and then I joined an Atlassian partner for a little bit, and then after that, an opportunity came up, and a company was looking for an admin to like work in-house full time.
Cool.
Really random, just came up, and I was like, they sound cool. It's an awesome company.
Yeah.
People can LinkedIn stalk me and figure out who it is. So it's not on LinkedIn. So anyways, I've had a bunch of different hats. So project manager hat, product owner hat for a little bit, and admin hat. And they're all kind of related in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to be like that person that, you talk to for all the things. Where do I find this? How do I do this? How does this thing work? Whether it's Jira, Confluence, or whatever other tools.
You're basically the nucleus of, I'm actually should not use that metaphor because I was going to go of a molecule where, and I was like, no, nucleus is in the atom. But like, you're basically the center of having to connect to so many different people and processes and teams. It just feels really hard to have to do that when you have to switch from teams who are normally used to being co-located to teams who now have to work more remotely together. And then there are teams who are 100% dedicated to being a distributed workforce. I'm wondering if you can kind of talk through the differences of like what it was like to work on teams that were in each of those phases, or if you'd rather just jump to the end on the distributed workforce front, like feel free to do that as well.
I feel like the muscles that we're exercising right now in weird COVID times are ones that if you have experience working at huge companies and or companies that have a globally distributed workforce, you develop good habits. The fact that we can't easily meet in person kind of highlights the dysfunction that exists in all companies.
Say more about that. What does that dysfunction look and feel like?
A lot of that is just kind of like how our policy is captured at a company. Like something as simple as like, how do I jot time for vacation? Do I go into a team calendar and jot time? Am I supposed to talk to somebody first? Is there an approval process? That's one thing. And then another thing is, if you're even documenting that, and even like things that folks don't necessarily think about, but really should think about, working agreements. That's a thing that's been in vogue. It's kind of like, how, this is how I operate. I'm a morning person. I love things in writing.
Yeah.
But then if you move that to a tool level, governance wise, how to use this tool? What is it used for? You could use Jira to just send messages to people and just say, screw Slack, screw emails, screw Microsoft Teams. But that would be not ideal. It's just like using like a screwdriver to hammer in nails.
Sure.
It's kind of like, so make sure everyone's, it's important to get everyone to agree on how a tool should be used and communicate that. But just like everything else. So that bleeds into like change management.
Yeah.
So like that's the whole project manager hat that I wear more often than I should. Because it's all related. You can't just be an admin of a tool and someone says, can you build me a Jira project? Do you really need that? Maybe you need a Trello board. Maybe you need a wiki page.
Yeah.
Maybe you need a wiki page and a project. What are you trying to solve for?
That's
versus
right.
just like, I'll just make the thing for you and then I have to take care of it later.
I really like what you're saying. So I'm hearing a few different insights here. One is that before, people were forced to have to rely on really good communication. Not that they shouldn't have before. Communication is always is key. But one thing I'm hearing is like, do you even have a process or a way to document things? Like,
right.
Are you codifying all of these things? Because if it's a necessity, maybe everyone should do it, or maybe people should know of what to do so that it gets them in the right rhythms. And then two, I'm hearing, you can't just use the tool and assume the tool is going to like take care of everything. You got to think about which tools are appropriate and how do you use them and are they necessary? And so there's like some critical thinking, lo and behold.
Exactly. Like you shouldn't take things at face value. If you want to be like really zen about it, like you have to be intentional about everything. Why are you building this thing for the company? Like what value is it going to bring? So likewise, why are you using these tools? Not just because it's here, but because it's like the best tool that you have access to. And it does these magical things. Like
I want to come back to that. I feel like you're going to give me really good examples, but before we get into examples, the third thing I wanted to mention is these working agreements that you spoke of. It's like, you can't just pick one off the shelf. You have to kind of talk to everyone to figure out what everyone wants. And so it requires a bit of like information gathering from people before just like deciding what to do. So those three things, I'm wondering if we get into specific examples, whether, it could be a real thing, but if you want to like
anonymize the data.
You can just make up a fictitious example that might feel like it could have happened with you in the past, but let's work backwards of those three things. Since we just talked about working agreements, like, can you give me an example of a team that you're working with either now or in the past or in imagination land where you didn't have one, you realized you needed one, and then how you actually came to get one?
I feel like all the examples I can think of are like, I think we just know that you need them. Like the reality is of like time zones. Like I've traveled a lot pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you feel the pain of a 9 a.m. meeting when you're on travel in San Francisco.
Yes.
And I'm like, I hate you all. But like you kind of, you have to do it. I voluntarily traveled to LA to visit friends for a wedding. And so I had to still work an East Coast schedule. And so that was really fun. But the great thing about working East Coast schedule when you're on the West Coast, you get off at 3 p.m. and you have to deal with traffic. So I feel it's really important to involve people as practically as you can in like all aspects of like, running your business or running your teams. Sure. So it's nice to know like when people work. So, like not to Slack somebody at 2 a.m. Unless they're cool with it. I've had people that say, I'll respond to it when I wake up. But it feels a little weird, because some of these tools aren't necessarily managed to, you're not supposed to like triage messages in Slack or in any IM platform. It's supposed to be like loose and light. So if you lose something, it was a Slack anyway. But that's also expectations, because a lot of people use instant messaging as like an interrupt driven. This is the most important thing.
Right.
That's also an assumption too, though, because some people are just used to IM over email. And you can see like in that last like 20 seconds, that highlights a lot of the dysfunction that happens.
I was just about to say, I was like, there's like 5 whole issues with that last statement. I'm just like,
exactly. We deal with it all the time.
Yeah. So like when you get the middle of the night Slack, is it so urgent because you have to get the ping right away? Or is it did you make the agreement that like, I'll get to it when I can? Or so how do you, you realize that you're talking about feeling the pain. And so you realize some kind of working agreement needs to be said, ideally documented. how do you get over the next hurdle of actually documenting it? Do you like reach out to someone? Is it you because you always got that project manager hat on that's like, we need to rally and just communicate about our preferences and put it on a page? Like what have you done in the past?
Um, in the past, as a PM, I would reach out to the team, and you have to have some questions first. What are you trying to solve for? Sometimes
Sure.
like it's general discovery. Schedules, I feel like, is like the easiest thing to go over. So you kind of reach out to the teams, and you're like, when do you work? So make sure your non-working hours are blocked off. So like at the very least, the calendaring system will block off like unintentional meetings. But like, when do you like meetings? Because there might be teams where you might not have like a daily stand up, but you might need to do a meeting for coordination. So when do you actually want to have your meeting? Some people are fine with any time with advance notice. That's great. That might not be good for the other person, but who knows? But at least
Right.
when you know it, you'll know what times are definitely mutually safe to schedule time.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, it has to be like a little sacrifice. Your
Sure.
monthly change management meeting with like your global board. It's like we'll have it in the morning one month, we'll have it at night at the other month,
Sure.
and you swap every so often. So if you're part of the PMO, or if you're just used to having that hat, at the very least, you'll start that conversation, and then you find other allies, either management or other PMs or anyone who might care to support you in your mission of like having sanity amongst your team. That's really important. It's clear when you're at like an organization that's like process oriented. You can definitely like bring it up and like have buy-in right away. But if
Yeah.
you're at a company of like 10 people, different problems.
Yeah.
Even 200 people, it's
Yeah.
different problems and priorities. So like, I don't really have time to think about that. And that's when you have to do, your grassroots, you still capture the information. You still do your best to be accommodating, because people will like you for that. They'll appreciate that.
Right. I really like that. Like you're bringing up a whole nother point of in making these things get off the ground, you need to get allies, you need to have advocates, which is easier said than done for a company that's just used to bringing up new things like this and making it better. But either the company's not used to it or you just don't have as many of those embedded advocates. Um, you have to make sure they're buying, because I bet being able to make change on one team becomes a lot easier when lots and lots of teams want to do the same kind of thing.
Absolutely. You have to be doing things for the right reasons. It's like, I don't want to know when you're working so I can harp on you. I want to know so I don't infringe on your personal time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, how will this help you?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it seems like an interrogation.
I agree.
Yeah.
I like that too. That you're affirming people out there that are like, and then it's going to be one more thing for teams you just mentioned. Like they're going to appreciate you. Like, thank you for giving us that affirmation that it's going to be well received, because it's for them too. It's for everyone.
Exactly. It's like, we're doing this for good reasons. Hope you kind of hope for positive intent, assume positive intent, but sometimes you have to communicate that.
And
for
sometimes
people
they have
that are
to
not used to it
and see it in action. But
oh yeah.
Whew, all right, I'm going to keep moving on. There's where we can go down this for a long time, but one of the other three things that you had mentioned earlier that we can do examples on is either documentation or adding process, or just not just assuming that people will just pick it up like, oh yeah, I should be mindful of something like time zones in this last example you brought up. But how do you document things, or how do you turn things into a process? Or am I assuming too much? Do you do that?
No, that's absolutely, that's reasonable. What I've recommended to people is, you have to capture it somewhere. Great place to put it in is Confluence, and of course, it's that Atlassian call, because you can always create different wiki pages for different processes, and then bubble them up in your page properties report. So there you go. And you can say like, who approved this. When was it approved? How long does it, apply for? Who does it apply for? And then the process. So when you go to like, how do I submit for vacation time? You can like search for vacation. You'll see all policies related to that.
Nice.
And so that's really important.
I like that too. So it's not just in the moment of like, oh, we have a problem. We don't know who's going to be on vacation during some holiday season and, or, yeah, going out season, and you put it all in one place. But in the future, if anyone wants to know, well, what happened in the past? I like what you said about you just search for it, just see what happened, and we can do the same kind of documentation again.
Exactly. You can show your entire process asset library, process list, whatever you call it, your standard operating procedures.
Mm-hmm.
You have that, and you can show it to other divisions, other teams. And this list of processes doesn't have to be for like an entire company. It can just be for like a smaller group. It might be a little too much for a small group. You might end up just having like a page, 2 pages, not just like a page for each individual thing. This is how you turn on your laptop.
Right.
At a company with like 40,000 people, you might need that. This is how you send in for a repair,
Right. It all depends.
It really does depend.
There's a third thing that we were going to go into, and I've forgotten what that was. I don't know if you remember, but if not, we did documentation, we did end process, we did working agreements, and then there was the one in the middle that I forgot. It's okay. I'm going to move on because I have more questions.
Okay. Cool.
So these are really good tips for people, like basics, so that people are basically on the same page and they understand
that there'd be basics.
Well, no, you're right. You're right. I think especially for traditionally co-located companies, you're relying on just seeing people and asking in the moment. So like, I get it. That totally makes sense. And this would be new for those that are transitioning into working on a distributed workforce for the first time. Which brings me up to my next question. Mm-hmm. Hurdles come up. You have worked with so many teams, it sounds, and I imagine they have different cultures and different styles and communication styles. I imagine you also ran into hurdles of some companies that were or some teams that were more into this than others. What kind of blockers or what kind of challenges came up into trying to get a team to communicate and share information and understand, what each other's preferences were? Or did you, was it so smooth because you're just a natural at getting them?
I mean, like, I feel like with adopting any process or best practices, you have to be able to demonstrate those practices and you have to coach them. So like, demonstrating is easy if you're into best practices, but like coaching, it's kind of like other people will fail and some people will fail spectacularly. So it's kind of like you have to kindly move them towards like
sure, it's new for them.
Don't add here in a channel at 2 a.m. for something that you think is important. We have an escalation path. Like there are places for things. Just keep fighting the good fight. So a lot of that is really just like emphasizing things kindly, not punishing. But it's kind of like don't be that person. Right. But like there's always that person who's that person, which is kind of messed up to say, and I shouldn't say that on this call, and I already did it.
We can
but
cut
hey,
it out.
You know what?
Cut it out.
Yeah, but you know what? If life would be boring if everyone totally abided by everything. So it's kind of like lead by example, but it really is like walks that talk. Keep following your own policies. And if they don't make sense, then change. Like nothing's perfect. Everyone's learning together. Even people that have been part of mobile first companies, remote first companies. We are all learning and very quickly.
There is so much good in what you just said. I just want to break it down to a few points. One is that everyone learns at different paces or starts from a different place of understanding already. Yeah. So there's coaching along the way that needs to be happening. You can't just say like, well, this is the policy, so I guess everyone's going to get it now. Like that would be a miracle if were that easy. And then 2, it sounds like leading by example and being positive about it is just like be persistent, I guess.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't work for a couple people or a minority of people one time doesn't mean you won't get better. And ideally, the longer you do it, the better it will get. Is that a true, fair statement? Okay.
Absolutely.
And then lastly, I like how you talked about like just be positive about it, be kind about it. I think that this isn't even a like distributed team lesson. It's just like from a psychological perspective, carrots work sometimes in the long run better than the stick. So
Absolutely. It's definitely kindness for long-term gains.
right.
Sometimes you do have to be the meanie in the room, but that's only if you're hired for a short stint and you're supposed to deliver results like without any sympathy. So it's at the cost of the relationships, but there is a time for that. That hopefully I never have to do. But
no, I mean, everything that you're talking about right now is the long game. You want, like, hopefully we're trying to grow teams for the long game and not for the short, like, I want to ship or deliver something at the end of this week and that's all I care about, right?
Right. You must all stay late. You must all stay late.
Because all that matters is we get this one metric for this 1 week. Like, that's not going to help the team in the long run, for sure.
No, it's not good. I had a manager ask me many companies ago. They were like, I need you to tell your team to stay late so we can deliver this thing by Friday. And I'm like, why don't you just tell us all? Anyways, that was weird. Cool. Never told that story before.
Well, this is all anonymous, and caveat, this may be made up and imaginary. So that manager, if you're out there, this may not be about you. One last thing I wanted to get to, you've had a breadth of experience working with teams that are all around the world, or members with team members all around the world, or just team units all around the world. I imagine you've got rhythms and all these skills and tips you're talking about now you had before. But I feel like the pandemic changed things even more for some teams. I'm curious for you, because you had all this experience, has it been kind of the same, like, well, we were already prepared for this, or has it been more like, well, we were mostly prepared, but the pandemic made uncovered these couple things that we had to tune up when it hit. I'm basically asking, did anything change for you in terms of something you had to adapt to post COVID-19?
Not me personally, because I've worked remotely for a really long time.
Makes sense.
But also in offices too. So it's kind of like that. But what's changed is having to help shepherd lots of other people that are not used to working in these weird times. So it is interesting, like I might have mentioned probably before, you see some people kind of like freaking out, and you see other people getting like stressed or whatever. So you kind of just have to like help them keep the eye on the ball. That's mostly a PM hat, but it's kind of like, why are we here? Let's remind us, why are we here? What's our sprint goal? What did it say over there on the Trello board or in, your Jira board? So it's kind of like, let's focus on that. And if you need time off, that's cool too. But, let's talk about it.
So I guess changes that I'm hearing are, one is like the coaching for those that are new, whether that's one-on-one or just more group reminders. And then two, preferences may have changed, needs to take off, maybe, for example, might be more necessary, but like
drop your kids off at school now.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you didn't have to do that before.
Right.
Or your kid needs the iPad.
What's cool about what you're saying with this example of the change with the pandemic isn't necessarily a change to process, in that you always said you want to advocate for preferences. You always said that you need to find out what people need and document it. And it's the same thing, it's different topics now.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But It is cool to see a lot more folks being real on calls, and like kids appearing out of nowhere and pets and things like that. It's a riot. Like, I think it's cool.
Yeah. It's more of like,
I don't think anyone does it.
I like it too. I feel like I get to know people a little bit more deeply now because they have no choice.
Right. Exactly. Deal with it.
Awesome. Dave, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking out the time to share what you've learned. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
I've got a website, and it is my name, Dave, Liao.com, daveliao.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Cheers.